Hello, students, and welcome back to yet another competency-based questions video. So we are going to be doing The Trees from your book, First Flight. And the writer of The Trees is Adrian Rich. So let's get going. So students, before we begin with the first question, let me just summarize and give you the theme of the poem in 2 lines. The poetess Adrian Rich has written about the trees who want to get freedom from the household. I mean, they are placed in the houses for decoration, but the real place for the trees is supposed to be the forests. The forests outside are empty, but the houses are full with the trees where the trees are not able to grow properly. So the trees want liberation and they move out. And this is a metaphorical representation of the women in the world who want emancipation and independence, who do not want to live in confinement, but they want to be free, liberated, and free from any restriction. So let's go and see the first question for 40 to 50 words. What do the trees symbolize in The Trees by Adrian Rich, and how is their movement described? So the trees in the poem symbolize transformation and freedom. They are described as moving out from the confinement into the tree forests, representing a journey from restriction to liberation. The quote, "The trees inside are moving out into the forest," illustrates this transformation. The trees also represent women who are getting liberated and moving into the world towards independence. So over here, students, you may also add that how the trees are moving out, how the boughs of the trees are moving out, how the leaves and the stem and the branches are moving out if you wish to extend your answer. Going to the next question. What is the central theme of The Trees by Adrian Rich and how is it portrayed? The central theme is liberation. The poem illustrates how the trees overcome their confinement with the quote, "Long, cramped boughs shuffling under the roof," symbolizing their journey from constraint to freedom. The poem also represents woman emancipation after a long era of suffering in confinement and struggle to break free. Let's go to the next question. So the next question is, what is the comparison of trees to newly discharged patients reveal about their state during the transition? Transition means transformation, change. And if you go back to the scene and imagine a scene of a hospital where there are patients who are getting discharged, maybe after some procedure, operation, intervention, you will realize that they do not have much energy. They want support to walk. So looking at that view, let's see the answer. The comparison shows their vulnerability and hope during the transition. Just like the patients are hopeful that they are going to live and survive now, they're going to get better with each passing day. In the same way over here, the trees also have the hope during this transition from moving out. The quote, "half dazed, moving to the clinic doors," suggests a sense of uncertainty and hope as the trees move from confinement to a new phase. Similarly, the women moving out in the world are also full of hope, yet not completely confident. So if you've noticed in the first 3 questions itself, everywhere where we are talking about the trees, we are also mentioning the women. Let's go to the next question. Question 4. How does Adrian Rich's description of the moon in the 3rd stanza change from the beginning to the end, and what causes this transformation? In the 3rd stanza of The Trees by Adrian Rich, the moon is initially described as the whole moon shines in a sky still open. This paints a picture of complete moon visibility since the sky is not covered with the tall trees and the vision is not disrupted. Towards the end of the stanza, the moon's pieces flash now in the crown of the tallest oak, This transformation is caused by the trees breaking free from their confinement, shattering the glass and moving into the night. This change in the moon's appearance mirrors the transformative and the liberating journey of the trees as they break free from their constraints and embark on a new path. The moon is not clearly visible as now the trees fill the forest and hinder the view. So, initially, children, first, the moon was visible completely. And why was the moon visible? Because there were no trees outside, they were all inside the houses. So, when you went out, you could see the sky, you could see the moon. But then, gradually, as the trees moved out, there was a transformation. Now, when you stood outside under the trees, you would realize that when you looked up, you would see leaves and all, and in between that, you could see small parts of the moon. That is why it's called fragmented. You could see only the fragments on the crown of the oak tree because oak trees are very tall. So the oak tree symbolizes change because there is where you don't see the full moon. So this is how the description of the moon has changed. Let's go to the next question. Why does the poet omit any reference to the departure of the forest from the house in her letters? Could it be that we tend to remain silent about unexpected and embarrassing events? So the poet is writing letters, but she mentions that I'm not mentioning about the trees moving out or this change that is happening. So the question says, why do you think she's not written about it? So the poet's omission of the departure of the forest from the house in her letters can be attributed to the serious, profound, unexpected and surreal nature of the event. Such extraordinary moments often leave us at a loss of words, reflecting a common human response to events that defy explanation or understanding. It's a form of silence stemming from awe or even embarrassment. In life, we frequently encounter events that are so remarkable or unexpected that they make us speechless. The omission signifies that sometimes words are insufficient to capture the depth of certain moments, and silence becomes a meaningful expression. So the answer says that the entire episode of the trees moving out from the house into the forest was such a serious, unexpected affair or event that this extraordinary moment left the poetess absolutely at a loss of words. She did not know how to describe. Reflecting this as a common response, many times you and I also feel at a loss of word when something absolutely surprising happens. So the same thing happened with the poetess over here, and thus she does not mention it, that what has actually happened. And where does she not mention it? In the letters. Let's look at the next question. This is a long answer type question. You will be required to write from 100 to 120 words. In Dust of Snow, the hemlock tree has a transformative effect on the speaker, while in The Trees, the tallest oak tree symbolizes change and growth. How do these two trees in these poems reflect the theme of nature's impact on human experience and personal life? In Dust of Snow and The Trees, nature takes center stage, demonstrating its profound impact on human experience and personal transformation. So this line has been taken from the question to make it an introductory line. In Dust of Snow, Robert Frost encounters a seemingly mundane event, a crow shaking snow off a hemlock tree, that unexpectedly transforms his mood from sadness, that is despondence, to uplifted mood. The hemlock tree in this instance acts as a catalyst, as a trigger for a powerful emotional shift. The poem beautifully illustrates how even the simplest aspects of natural world can influence our outlook, offering solace, that is peace, and renewal in unexpected moments. So let's understand only this much. So we've picked up only the poem Dust of Snow. The question requires us to compare the trees, hemlock tree of the poem Dust of Snow and the oak tree of the poem The Trees, and talk about their symbolism, about change and growth. So we remember that in Dust of Snow, the poet came and stood under the hemlock tree, and the crow came, shook the hemlock tree, and some snow dust fell on the poet, making him happy, making him transform his mood. From sadness, it was uplifted. So this paragraph talks about how the hemlock tree became a trigger, became a reason for this shift in the emotional well-being of the poet at that time, who is Robert Frost. Looking at the next paragraph, the imagery of the crow and the hemlock tree highlights the idea that nature's small, often overlooked elements possess the potential to trigger significant personal transformation. So the next paragraph we're going to read is going to deal with the trees. And which tree? The oak tree. So on the other hand, in Adrian Rich's The Trees, the tallest oak tree represents change and growth on a grand scale. It is the embodiment of a collective effort to break free from the constraints and embrace transformation. Rich uses the image of the oak tree to symbolize the liberation, that is independence, of an entire forest, highlighting the capacity of nature to instigate, to trigger, to start serious change, profound change on both an individual and the communal level. The oak tree's emergence into the forest mirrors a larger theme of empowerment and liberation. So in the second last line, we say that there is a change in the individual, that is the trees over here, and communal level over here is all the women. So it could also be taken as the individual woman changing and the entire community of women changing and getting emancipation, that is independence. Then comes the concluding paragraph where you talk about both of them together. Both poems convey that nature, whether through the subtle intervention of a hemlock tree or the grandeur of the tallest oak, holds the power to impact our emotions, perspectives, and lives in a way we might not immediately recognize. They remind us that amidst life's complexities, nature remains a constant force of transformation and renewal. Let's go to the next question. Is there a conflict between humanity and nature in the poem, particularly when compared to a tiger in the zoo? Does the poet propose that urban uses of plants and trees primarily for interior decoration, while forests are depleted, can be seen as a form of imprisonment? And is there a call for these plants and trees to break out? So the question says that just like in the tiger in the zoo, the tiger was kept in confinement behind the bars in a cage. Do you think trees are also represented to be in a cage of a house where you plant the trees or keep them in pots for your beautification of the house, but the tree feels imprisoned? And the question also asks in the end, that is there a call from the poetess to break free of these trees to break out from the house and go out? So let's see the answer. In the poem, The Trees, there isn't a direct conflict between humanity and nature as seen in A Tiger in the Zoo, where the tiger's captivity represents a clear conflict between human domination and the wild essence of the animal. However, in The Trees, there is a more subtle conflict between human influence and the desire for nature's freedom. In The Trees, there isn't a direct conflict between humanity and nature as seen in The Tiger in the Zoo. In The Tiger in the Zoo, the poem portrays a clear conflict between human domination and the wild essence of the tiger, which is held captive within the boundaries of the zoo. The poem questions the morality of a caging, magnificent, fierce creature for public display, highlighting the tiger's yearning for freedom. So we've read two paragraphs. The first one gives us an introduction that the trees are not is not a poem where there is a direct conflict between humans and nature, but there's a subtle conflict and a desire to be free, the tree's desire. But in Tiger in the Zoo, it was very, very clear that, he wants to be free. The tiger is always looking at the sky, the stars, and here's the patrolling cars. But this is not where he wants to be. He wants to be in the jungle, showing his white fangs, if you remember all of that, students. Continuing, the use of plants and trees for interior decoration, while natural forests are being cut down, can indeed be seen as a form of imprisonment. The poem suggests that nature, represented by the trees, is eager to break out, to reclaim its wild, untamed state and escape the constraints placed upon them. This reflects the poet's ecological concerns, emphasizing the need to preserve the natural world and allow it to flourish beyond the confines of human-made structures. The poem encourages us to reconsider our relationship with nature and to let it thrive, live, rather than restrict it for mere decoration and ornamentation. In summary, while both poems touch on themes related to humanity's interaction with nature, The Tiger in the Zoo more explicitly addresses the conflict between man and the captive wild animal, whereas The Trees emphasizes nature's desire to regain its freedom in the face of human constraints, calling for a harmonious coexistence with the natural world. So the paragraph that we read on this page talks about the poem The Trees, where the trees want to be free and where there is an indication that we are keeping the trees as captives when we are keeping them in our four walls, whereas we are cutting the forests. How ironical that the large forests are being cut, but these trees are being confined to our houses, whereas it should be opposite. And the last paragraph is summing up both the poems, telling us what is the relevance of both of them. Next, the poem The Trees by Adrian Rich employs the image of trees as a metaphor for women. How does this metaphor influence your interpretation of the poem's exploration of gender roles and societal expectations? So this question talks about the role of women in the world and how is this poem metaphorically representing women. So through trees we get to know about the plight of women. Let's read the answer. The metaphor of trees as women in Adrian Rich's The Trees profoundly impacts the interpretation of the poem's exploration of gender roles and societal expectations. By casting trees as women, Rich symbolically aligns the trees, transformation and liberation with women's struggles for autonomy and freedom. So here the trees are made women over here. The trees are being talked about as women. So through this, Rich is trying to tell us that even the women want transformation, independence, liberation, emancipation. They want to be free from all the struggles. They want to be independent. Next paragraph. Throughout the poem, the tree's journey from confinement to forest signifies a larger societal movement towards empowerment and self-expression. This metaphor underscores the idea that women, like the trees, often find themselves in constricted spaces but possess the resilience and determination to break free. So we get to know that though women are also confined inside, but just like the trees are trying to move out, these women also have the energy, the determination to break free someday. Next, the poet challenges traditional gender roles. You know what are traditional gender roles? The man is going to go and work outside, the woman will stay in, the man is going to protect the women are the docile people, they're not self-sufficient, so the man is the provider. So all these kind of things, children, are the traditional gender roles, and these are the expectations of the society. So let's read. The poet challenges traditional gender roles and highlights the immense effort required to overcome societal constraints. This powerful metaphor emphasizes the collective longing for change. liberation, and an escape from oppressive norms. It invites us to consider the complexities of gendered expectations and the human desire for transformation. The poem speaks to the resilience of women in the face of societal limitations, echoing the feminist discourse that was prevalent during the time when Rich wrote this poem. So to understand this poem, children, you must know a little bit of history, the context. So when Adrian Rich actually wrote this poem, there was a revolution going on that the women wanted to be free from so many things. There was a time when the women did not even have the voting rights. So there were a lot of revolutions going on, changes going on. There was a lot of, want that the women should be given equal rights as men. That is when Adrian Rich wrote this poem. Going on, these are some extra practice questions, though I've covered a lot because this poem is very important and has a lot of in-depth meaning, underlying meaning. So there are some more questions that you can look at. How does Adrian Rich's active participation in the feminist movement of her time influence the portrayal of women's experiences and aspirations in her poetry, particularly in this poem? So this is related to the history that I just told you. Question 2. Can the poem The Trees be interpreted as a reflection of the feminist movement's aims, such as challenging traditional gender roles and advocating for women's rights? And if so, how? How does the theme of change in the trees relate to the broader human experience and emotions? How does the poem convey urgency and movement in the face of significant change? How does the poem create a blend between the personal and universal experience? How does Rich vividly describe the efforts of the tree to break free? So that we come to the end of the video. I just hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Take care, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.